It's Tuesday, April 14th. We're going to continue on the unit photosynthesis and cellular respiration. Yesterday we did photosynthesis, today we'll do cellular respiration, which is the evil twin of photosynthesis. So don't forget to do your My Way on page 60. Yesterday we talked about how photosynthesis, where it happens, and what the ingredients and products are. Today we're going to do cellular respiration. So here's a review of photosynthesis. It's a process in which the chloroplasts take sunlight energy and create glucose. The chemical equation is quite simple. You have carbon dioxide going in, water going in, sunlight going in, and then two things coming out, glucose and oxygen. Now, the plant doesn't really need the oxygen. It just lets it go into the atmosphere, lucky for us. But the plant actually wants to keep the glucose. It might keep it in its vacuoles, maybe in its roots or its tubers, so it can store it for later, like potatoes and stuff like that. It can store it maybe the glucose. It can store the glucose maybe in fruits and stuff like that. Right? And so here is the simple view: sunlight, carbon dioxide, water going in, oxygen, glucose coming out. And we have the more complex view, and then even more complex view. But like I said, for the purposes of middle school, you can just focus on the simple view. So make sure you draw this on page 61. So now let's talk about the evil twin of photosynthesis. So photosynthesis creates glucose and oxygen. Cellular respiration, being the evil twin, will break down glucose. So if you look at this diagram, you can learn a lot about the process of cellular respiration. So if you look closely, you'll see that glucose will go in. Right? What else goes in? Well, you have oxygen going in. And what is it going into? Well, it's actually going to mitochondria. These are the organelles in the cells that break down glucose and creates energy. So three things come out of here. Well, you get some carbon dioxide that you breathe out. You get some H2O water that you shishi out. But the most important thing here is you get ATP energy. This is the energy that the cells can use to do anything it needs to do. The ATP is useful for, reproduction. It's useful for moving things around and stuff like that. So the ATP is it's like the currency or the cash of the cell. So the more ATP you have, the more energy the cell has to do what it needs to do. Okay. So on page 63, let's continue our notes. This is cellular respiration, LS1-7. So as you can tell, it's all about how chemical reactions can provide energy for your cells. Okay. So this happens in mitochondria. It's called cellular respiration. And the reason why it's called cellular respiration is because you need oxygen. So you respire, you breathe in oxygen. Why? Because the cells, the mitochondria, need this to break down the glucose. The chemical reaction is the exact opposite of photosynthesis. So let's see what I mean. Two things go in. You have C6H12O6, that's the glucose, and O2, that's the water. That's the oxygen. And three things come out. CO2, that's the carbon dioxide, H2O, that's the water, and ATP energy. ATP actually is adenosine triphosphate, but you don't need to really know that. But ATP energy, this is what the cells need to do what they need to do. So the brain cells need a lot of ATP. The muscle cells need a lot of ATP. So you notice this is the exact opposite of photosynthesis. Instead of glucose coming out, glucose is going in. Instead of oxygen going out, oxygen is going in. Instead of carbon dioxide going in, carbon dioxide is coming out, water is coming out. But instead of sunlight coming out, it's ATP energy coming out. Now, a lot of people get confused with this part. They think that plant cells do not do cellular respiration. They think that they only do photosynthesis. But that doesn't make any sense because the plant cells make the glucose for themselves. And so we steal their glucose, but they still want their glucose. So if you look closely at the picture of a plant cell, you'll notice they have the chloroplast, but they also have the mitochondria. And the mitochondria are there so that they can use their glucose and make ATP energy. Okay. Here's the simple view. You have glucose going in, so C6H12O6 going in. You have oxygen going in, that's O2. And you have three things coming out: carbon dioxide, CO2, water, H2O, and ATP energy. And don't forget that this all happens in the mitochondria. Now, this at the middle school level is enough for you to know, but in high school, you're going to get this again. It's going to get a little bit more complex. You ready? All right. So don't freak out. It's the same thing. You have mitochondria right there. Yeah. You got the glucose going in, and then you have the oxygen going in. Now, three things come out. You have carbon dioxide coming out right here. You have water coming out right here. And you get ATP. So you get some ATP up here and a lot more ATP down here. So this is the high school level. Now, the next slide is really intimidating because this is at the college level. You might need to know this. But it's the same thing. So a couple things just to point out. You have the mitochondria right here. You have the glucose going in. Isn't that amazing? I mean, the fact that scientists have figured out every single step of how glucose is broken down into carbon dioxide and water. I used to know this when I was a college student, but it's been so long since I've studied this that I don't know this anymore. Something else to notice is that there's a hormone here that is so important. It's a hormone that people who are diabetic have a problem making or using. Do you see it? So it's an insulin right there. You need some more insulin right there. You need some more insulin right there. And so what that insulin does is it allows the body to break down sugars. And so people who are diabetic, they either can't make the insulin or they can't use the insulin. So they have a hard time breaking down these sugars. And so you either take a shot to give yourself insulin or you take some medication to help you regulate that insulin. Okay. But luckily for you, for the middle school level, you just need to know a basic level. So on page 63, if you can draw out what cellular respiration looks like, make sure you put in the two things going in. You have glucose and oxygen. And the three things that come out, you have the carbon dioxide, water, and energy, ATP energy. And lastly, don't forget to label the mitochondria. So you could put anything here. You could put maybe SpongeBob or Patrick, because they both do cellular respiration. You can also even put a plant, because remember, plants also have mitochondria, and plants can also do cellular respiration. All right, so that's it for today. I'll finish off with a song, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Processing bacteria, animals, and plants in both the autotrophs and the heterotrophic cells. Use oxygen to turn your food into ATP. The cells need energy to move and do things, so they use the food you eat to make ATP. The chemical the cells use for energy. Respiration, that's aerobic, using oxygen that you breathe. In your body, cells turn food to energy. Glucose from the food you eat, oxygen you breathe in, ATP energy. Release carbon dioxide when you breathe, creates water when complete. Three products total with ATP energy.